All right. Hey, we have Dr. Marty Mazzawi with us today, and a dentist extraordinaire, and also kind of like brewmeister. We'll get into that as well. So let's talk a little bit about the dental practice first. So tell me a little bit about this kind of large traveling troupe of dentist family Mazzawis. I'm fascinated by the whole thing.
All right. Well, it is a pretty interesting story. I have been super blessed to have my parents that have created something for us, their children, to take over and just run with it. So, sorry, my parents started the office in the 67 era or 67 time frame. My dad was first, and my mom came 2 years later. They met at Emory University in Atlanta at the dental school. So my dad and mom came back out to my mom's hometown to kind of build their practice and build their life.
Love that.
So,
I didn't realize that mom was dentist as well.
oh yeah, Mom.
So both mom and dad really were jumping in and starting that practice together.
Yeah, my mom was the root canal specialist in the office, because back in the day they were the second dental office in Gwinnett County. She was the first female dentist, I believe, in Gwinnett County.
No kidding.
And they were the first husband and wife dentist, of course, I think, in Gwinnett County. So it was kind of a newer thing, and they were pretty on the forefront of that. So, but it's always been it's been there. It's been in the same place. I just had a patient yesterday that said, I started with your dad, and that was one of the first ones here 50 years ago.
So and how many kids did they have?
They had 6.
And how many of those became dentists?
5. Yeah, one of them, we lost our oldest brother in 1994 between my junior and senior year, which kind of goes into my faith story.
Right.
So that happened 1994, the summer when I was at basketball camp. And but he was in medical school. So he was in medical school at Medical College of Georgia. He was out in between his second and third year doing a little trip out west. So and got in a car wreck. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And so he passes, but then 5 of them become dentists?
Yeah, my brother Mark. So he was my brother Mark's right after Mike. So Mike was 24. My brother Mark was 23, and he was actually a freshman in dental school at that time. So and there was always talk of us following in the footsteps, because my mom and dad told us it was a great place to, kind of hang your shingle kind of thing, and you would be able to do other things. So that's another kind of my story of how I've done other things using the dental office. So.
Okay. And so you have how many siblings are still practicing with you there in the office?
So my brother Mark, my brother Matt, my sister Megan, my cousin Darren, and my brother Miles and his wife will come in and do pediatric dentistry a couple times a week.
That's great.
So, or a couple times a month, I should say. So we're all there, at least we're all there almost every day. So
okay. I mean, it's a big office. I mean, I'm impressed with how many doctors are on staff there.
Yeah, it's a big office. My dad and my mom always had someone else in there with them, because family was important. So they wanted someone to be there to kind of hold the, if they wanted to take us on a trip, which they did frequently. So they had always had associates,
right?
And so, as we grew into it and the associates kind of retired, we kind of took over the helm, and my brother Mark and Matt, and they kind of run the show until I got there, and then Megan, we kind of all worked together.
And did everyone go through Medical College of Georgia?
Yep.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was
super tough to get into right now.
Right now it is, but when I went through it was okay. Thank goodness I had some forerunners and out there laying the track, and that's kind of how we see Hollis here.
Right. Right. And she wants to go into that realm as well. That is fantastic.
And to us, she's one of the things we like about Hebron is the fact that she's kind of blazing a trail, and she's setting a good mark for everybody else, and they just got to kind of keep up with it.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's kind of what my brothers did for me.
And then you'll have third generation.
Yeah.
There. You don't have any third generation yet, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
Hollis is the oldest. Carter's a year older, and he's at Georgia now too.
Okay. That is
That's
awesome. So are there inherent challenges to working in a company where almost everyone has the same last name? Like, are there challenges to that? Are the challenges far outweighed by the advantages?
Yeah, the advantages are enormous. It's just I couldn't have been more lucky or blessed or however you want to say it, but to get into where I'm at. My brothers, we work closely together, but we're kind of far enough apart.
Sure.
And my sister too. That we were kind of, it's our own practice, so to speak, but we're in the same building, so I can go over to my brother and say, hey, look at this for me. Can you give me a hand with it? I'm not sure I'm doing it the best way. So super lucky to be able to do that.
That's great.
And so I've always had like mentors in the office. And I've been in the office my whole life too. I started cleaning toilets when I was elementary school.
Sure.
Middle school, we went to the front desk, answered phone calls, made appointments, collected money sometimes. So high school, I was a dental assistant for Saturdays and afternoons after school, some Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then in the summer, I worked there throughout the summer.
So, I mean, you really know every position from the ground up. And that's what a privilege that is, because you truly understand what literally every single employee is doing because you've done it.
I've done everything.
That is awesome.
So,
I would imagine too that produces, like, just the idea of the familial relationship there. You can kind of cut through ego and everything because you're going to still spend Thanksgiving together, So I would imagine it produces excellence at a faster rate because you don't have the ego maybe that some doctors would have coming to other doctors to say, what do you think about this?
Well, yeah, it's just never been an issue because they got help from my mom and dad when they were starting. So when I got there, they're like, yeah, let's help, man. Here. I'm learning how to do implants now.
Right.
And so I've got my brother Matt or Mark, even my cousin Darren are all there just saying, okay, this is how if I'm starting to struggle, they'll jump in for me. So it's never really been an issue. And the good thing is the way it's set up is we don't have to really compete with each other. We can just kind of work in our own thing. My brothers do things I don't like to do because I don't like to, I'm not aggressive with like taking wisdom teeth out, but they like it. So they do it and it works out. So
that's really cool. Now is your wife Zoe, is she a dentist as well?
No, Zoe is she did assist me for a little bit when I first got out, but no, she was a teacher for 4 years. When I was in dental school. And then when we got home, we started with our family. Right. So that was in 2003.
I thought she had an educational background, but I wasn't exactly.
Yeah, she's a math whiz. So,
okay, cool.
She was at UGA. That's where we met. So yeah.
Well, so you began talking about your brother who was in this accident, and that impacted your faith journey. Let's kind of talk a little bit about, here you are a doctor, a dentist in a renowned practice in the area. How does faith play into your role? Kind of in your life in general? How does faith play? And tell me a little bit about the inception of that. Where did it start?
So after, I was, of course, reeling after my senior year in high school, and I was, trying to figure things out. And I think Billy Graham Crusade came in to the Dome, I think, at that point. And so I, a couple of my friends went, and I was, in a position I was seeking, why is this happening? Why do we have to deal with this? He was he's a very nice guy. Had a lot of good things going for him. We were a pretty tight-knit family. So I was really questioning things and then getting started in that. That was kind of my first kind of step. We'd gone to church every now and then, but it wasn't a focus really on our family. We were family oriented, but not church oriented. Okay. So once that happened and I started to kind of search, it came to me and I took the opportunity to go down, and I didn't really hit it hard. I was still dipping my toe in and out, kind of thing. Sorry. And but when I went to Georgia, after my senior year, went straight to Georgia, and then met Zoe, and we were doing the Wesley Foundation there.
Yeah,
so that was a very...
My son leads worship there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I thought we talked about that. We almost went there last week when we did the orientation. But so Wesley was really, 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 a great kind of resource for us.
That is great.
So I spent a lot of time there over my Wednesdays and 4 years, and had a really good pastor there, Tom Tanner, who actually married Zoe and I.
Oh, that's cool.
Not with us, but actually performed a ceremony.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it kind of I grew into it, I would say, over my college years.
And so that college experience was huge,
Mm-hmm.
and that really kind of caused you to be challenged with how your faith was going to be lived out. Now, may I say you've married very well. So, we kind of, both of us kind of outkicked our coverage, right?
Certainly.
So now Zoe's a really strong believer. And so I'm sure that has really helped out with your faith as well. Just that relationship growth as well.
She is I would say she's the foundation. And I've heard it said by other guys before, other husbands, I guess, that their wife is, the rock in their family. And it's true in our case too, because she's a solid foundation that everybody can be built off of.
Right.
She pretty much frames it up for everybody in our house. So
that's cool.
And she's just super diligent, super seeks. She wants to know, wants to learn, wants to figure it out, and we all kind of we all benefit from that.
Yeah, we love having the Mazzawis around here, and your wife has even jumped in on a J-term class this last year, which we hope to expand. I actually have a journal that she started this prayer wall, which I think you helped design.
I got to help build that a little bit.
And so I go by and turn over the prayer requests and write them in my journal all the time. And so I think it's awesome. Now you guys are involved in 12 Stone. So how does that impact your family? Are your kids involved there? How does that kind of avenue of church involvement as well take place?
If we're in town, we're at church.
Yeah.
And if we're somewhere where we've got internet access, we'll watch it. But that is a thing that Zoe has and I have kind of strived to maintain. That if you're in town, we're going to go get our church on and commit to that.
Right. Now, have you used your dental practice and the skills that you have on the mission field as well? I understand you're involved with Doctors Without Borders and some other pieces.
I've done I'm more of a local kind of mission-y kind of person. I'm not one to make a trip to like a country that's needs help. I'm a little afraid to fly a little bit so doing that is not my strong point. But what I like to do is I like to have people come in my office and they don't know that I'm going to do this, but if I get a nudge from God, it's done, it's on. Yeah. So I'm like it's just something I can do. So for instance, I'll have a patient come in and they'll be like, I've got this tooth that's killing me. I want to get it out. And I'm like, well, that's a great tooth and we want to keep that because it's kind of a foundation. And they're like, well, I really just can't do it. Financially, we're just not there. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just do it anyway. So that's one thing that I feel that God has provided for me to provide for his people. Yeah. So anytime I have a nudge, and it happens pretty frequently, it's if he tells me to do it, I do it. And that's the way I feel like I am a kind of a missionary in that sense.
Mm-hmm. It's a big thing that in Christian education, I just consider it such a privilege. One of the goals that we have for our students here is to actively engage them with the idea that they're going to go out into the world, whether it's being a dentist or whether it's being a lawyer or a biologist or whatever it is. We want them to be the best in their field, unashamedly, unabashedly, but to also have a really deliberate and thought through faith that they're going to take into that context. And so, again, I think I've got just finishing up with your third generation of dentists, as she graduated last year. We look at this mindset of going into the world and bringing our context of faith there. And really what you're talking about is the exact application of that, is that you're being a dentist and you're being great at it. And in that context, you're also finding where Christ can be applied in that role.
And that is where I've found my niche.
Right.
So there were stories, and I always hear stories about how my mom and dad helped people. And so I've absorbed that and used that with my faith to kind of build my niche as far as how I can help people in the community. It's not the only way I help people,
Sure.
but it's a place that I feel like God has set me up to serve for Him. And
I love like that you've received generational blessing through your mom, and now you are passing on generational blessing
Yes.
to your community, which is cool.
Yeah, and that's another thing. My parents just they set me up, and I've got to use that. I've got to take advantage of that to I'll set my kids up,
Right.
but I'll take what they, like there are instances again where I would hear of patients that didn't have the money, and my parents were like, okay, well, whatever. So, well, you can pay us later if you want to, and they'll just bring in food, and then that's the payment. So they're out of their garden, they'll have vegetables, and they'll bring in because that's what they could do at the time, and that's so. There are countless stories that I hear, so I feel obligated and fortunate enough that I can carry on that tradition.
Awesome.
But I also use it with my faith, so people know that. People know why I do it.
Right.
And there's really two reasons. My parents did it, and my faith kind of dictates that. That's the lead that I got from my relationship.
I love that. Now we've mentioned your kids several times. You've got 5 wild and woolly kids, coming coming through or already through our system here. Talk to me a little bit about that, because your kids are really and truly faith-centered. They're also super cool kids. They're just fun kids. They're involved in a lot of different things. They seem extremely well balanced. Give us some parenting tips on kind of that idea of raising kids, really training up kids in today's generation, with today's challenges. Give us some ideas on that.
Well, I think it does go back to us with our commitment to, if we're home, we're at church, we're volunteering. Harper volunteers, Hoke volunteers, the boys will volunteer when they get a little bit older. Hollis, she led a small Bible study for 12 Stone for the middle schoolers, I think. So we've got that foundation, and then we try not to be too not overbearing, but we try to give them a framework to kind of stay within, and if we give them a little bit more control. So we don't guide them as much. We let them self-guide a little bit. We give them the boundaries, and then we say, if you stick in this, you've got the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want. If we need to, we can pull you back in. But we want them to experience. We want them to be self-led. We want them to be organized in a way that allows them to do whatever they want to do.
So I talk about it here quite a bit, where when we're working with kids, we give them choices, but we control the choices. So you're still having the ability to choose between the following 3 or 4 options, but we're probably the ones providing the options for you. And it gives kids the ability to grow in a safe environment where they can understand that, okay, I can make some mistakes, but I've got a safety net of a loving mom and dad who are doing less preaching and more teaching, and really living it out. I talk a lot about the idea of speaking with question marks rather than with exclamation points. A lot of times parents are like, you need to do this, you need, and everything has an exclamation point at the end of it, rather than instead saying the exact same message, but saying, hey, what do you think about handling it this way? Or have you thought about this approach to it? And really, like, I see your kids kind of mature beyond their years, but also just really balanced, with that mindset of who they are in Christ. But in a very normal way, which I absolutely love. I just think it's really cool,
Yeah, we try to balance that. We guide them, but we don't push them.
Right.
So but we also let them know that there's consequences, and with your consequences, with your actions, there are consequences, and they could be good or bad. And you're going to suffer the consequences if you have trouble, if you do cause trouble. So. And I don't know if it's because of how we kind of the kids kind of came around with the girl, boy, boy. It's definitely a different beast when the boys come. It's we're still learning that.
That's right.
Because they're they're in the
being a girl dad is totally different than being a guy dad.
So we're navigating that, and it's a hard thing to navigate. I wouldn't say I didn't think when I was thinking about having a bunch of kids when I was growing up, which I always thought I was going to do, but I didn't think, it would be this hard, but it's hard.
Middle school years are really tough.
Yeah.
High school years are tough, and I think it can be more risky, but I don't think they're as hard as the middle school years. I just think that, puberty throws kids into just being totally discombobulated.
Yeah.
I do love every year. I can't wait for my sophomores to come back from break. When they come back from summer break, starting their junior year, it's like I've gone from having a boy or a girl to having a man or a woman. Like it's so awesome to be able to see where that growth takes place. I always try to tell parents, because my kids are older, I always try to say, like, around their freshman, sophomore year in college, we finally get smart again as parents. We go through a stage where they know more than us. But really around that sophomore year, we tend to get smart again, which is really nice.
They can use this again. Huh?
Yeah. So you're, we still get to pay for everything, which is nice. All right. So, hey, we've got dentist extraordinaire, great dad, working hard, making sure you're living out your faith. I've got to jump in on this kind of one anomaly aspect of this whole description, right? Is that you also are the co-owner of Slow Pour, a brewery in our area, and I think maybe even expanding in there.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that story, how, dentist Christian dad jumps in on also jumping in on a brewery in our area.
Yeah. What's going to blow your mind is I don't even like beer.
I know it, which is crazy.
It's weird. So, when I was at Georgia, I took a class called Foods and Fermentation. We made beer, wine, bread, cheese, but it was a microbiology centered class.
Okay.
So at that class, I learned, that it's a neat process. It's microbiology, kind of heavy. It's an art and a science all together. And I'm not very good at that part, but I like the process, and I like to try to build things. So, another thing that my parents instilled in us was that dentistry is a really great base, but you can also do fun things off of it. So I dabbled. I have a coffee shop up in North Carolina that I run with a buddy, because I used to study in coffee, so a coffee shop. So that was one thing I did. I tried a website and findmyyardsale.com way back when. That one failed miserably. So that was one of the things that being a dentist allowed us to do, which is one of the reasons why we, as a family, we said, this is a great job to allow you to do things, travel, do other neat things that you're interested in, create something, try something different. So,
and are you expanding the brewery into another location? I heard that was a possibility.
Yeah, we're going to be at 4 locations pretty soon. So we've got one in Stone Mountain. It's a niche brewery with 2 really talented people, and then Slow Pour. It was our first, and it's growing and changing and.
In Lawrenceville.
And then we're working on Winder. We're doing the demolition on a new, bigger, crazy building. It's going to be pretty fun to do. So that's part of the fun for me. Even though I don't love beer and I really don't get to make it, I get to build where it is. So
right.
I'm a big community kind of person.
Right.
So I feel like the reason why tap rooms make it is because it's community. So if you go into my tap room that we've created, it doesn't have TVs necessarily. It's more for community communication, talking. It's family oriented, it's dog oriented.
Right.
You can. We want it to be a place for people to come and communicate.
Right.
So we do sports on special occasions, but we try to limit TV access. And so, the Winder location will be called Daybreak, and it'll be a community oriented place as well. We'll have actually a garden. It's a beer garden, but it's a garden. It's going to be managed by a certified master gardener.
So cool.
Which is something that we use again to communicate with the city that they're important, because it'll be open to the public, and we want people to learn from it, and we want people to enjoy it. We want people to see a place where they can come and just reconnect.
And that's the great approach, that it's for you, it's not even about the beer, it's about the community.
Yeah.
You enjoy this process of it, really kind of the entrepreneurial spirit of it, but also just the idea of you're forming something that's going to impact lives, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And we also try to utilize that building to help the community as well.
Right.
So at Slow Pour, we started. The first thing we ever had in the building was a women's conference that Zoe and her sisters and a couple other Hebrew folks started, and the first activity in the building, even before we had it permitted and all that stuff, when I was doing the demolition, was a
Christian women's conference.
Yeah, and awesome. So we love that.
Yeah.
And then one of the things we like to do is we do bingo night once a month, and all the proceeds from bingo night go to a particular charity or somebody that needs help, or anything like that. So
awesome.
we try to use it to uplift the community as well. And I think that's another thing. I'm not like I'm not a preacher, so I'm not going to get up in front of people and lay out a sermon. My thing is to let people see that I care about community, care about them, and then I want them to say, why does he do that? And he does that because he's kind of directed by God. So
and honestly, like Marty, that's exactly what I'm trying to do with this podcast, but also what I'm trying to do with my own life calling, right? Is to expose the young men and women that God has put into my life through Christian education, to expose them to men and women who understand their faith and how it's practiced. Mm-hmm. That I think so often we think faith can only be practiced as a pastor or as a missionary or as a worship leader. But faith can be practiced in so many different ways where we get to see the authenticity of who Christ is, but to be able to really apply that to life. And so, Marty, I thank you so much for coming in today and sharing a little bit about what God is doing in your life and just how your journey has been so unique and yet is being used intricately for the kingdom, which I love, developing community and also helping the community. So Marty, thank you so much for coming in today
My pleasure.
to the Joy of Leadership podcast.
All right. I thank you for having me.
Thanks.